Okay, great. Okay, so good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Professor Ostrow. Thank you. Well, that was fun. No, so I'm Professor Ostrow, and in addition to being a professor, since January, I have had the privilege of serving as the executive director of the Wilbur F. Breslin Center for Real Estate Studies here at the law school. And I am delighted to welcome all of you to our second annual program with the Breslin Center. And it's a real estate panel discussion that I think really epitomizes what Wilbur Breslin was envisioning in starting this center. The Breslin Center is designed to bring together various stakeholders in commercial real estate. So real estate professionals, legal professionals, government officials, members of the public, students, and to provide a space for all of these groups to collaborate and to think about some of the challenges of real estate development and also the many opportunities that are available, both on Long Island and across the country. So before we just start the actual program, I just want to take a minute to give a thank you to Allison Brennan. Don't sit. Allison hurt her leg, so sit. But Allison is the Chief Executive Officer of Einbinder Development, and she is also the Vice President of the Long Island Real Estate Group. And Allison was really instrumental in putting this panel together, so thank you for all of your help. And then lastly, in addition to being the executive director of the Breslin Center, I also have the honor of being the faculty advisor for the Law Students Real Estate Law Association. And I am very, very proud of our students. They have shown a high degree of professionalism and dedication in planning this program and also other programs throughout the year. And so they're truly a credit to the law school. And so without further ado, I am going to turn the program over to the president and vice president of the Law Student Real Estate Association, Alex Migliorini and Barbara Blaschik.
Thank you for that introduction. So for all you who don't know me, again, I'm Alexander Migliorini. I'm president of the Real Estate Law Association.
And I'm Barbara Blaschik. I'm the Vice President of the Real Estate Law Association, and we're all really excited with the great turnout today, and we hope to see you at our future meetings, and we're excited and looking forward to see what's going to come out of it.
All right, well, we got a great panel for you today. We got several speakers. We got Scott Burman, who's the partner at the Engel Burman Group. He's one of the largest real estate development companies on Long Island. We also have Bram, who's the partner at Weber Law Group, and they specialize in real estate development. He's an alumni of Hofstra. We have Michael DiLeo, who's a partner at Bram and Altman. He's also an alum, and he specializes in real estate finance side of real estate. And then we have Joseph Willen, who is the president of Title Advantage. And we also
This is good.
and we have Debra, Thompson, who is the vice president and general counsel of Title Advantage. And we have bios that have been handed out, giving you greater detail in regards to their positions.
Does anyone want? I have more up here. If anyone wants the full bios, I'll pass them around.
All right. Well, without further ado, we'll introduce our first guest, Scott Burman.
Thank you, and thank you all for giving us the opportunity to speak to you today. Before we start, I just want to let everybody know that we all are very friendly. We all worked together for many years as Long Island Real Estate Group. Long Island Real Estate Group is a not-for-profit organization, group of real estate developers and allied trades. We raise money, we have about 400 members, we raise money through memberships and other methods, and then we give the money away at the end of the year to various charities with real estate focused projects. We've given away well over $1 million over the years. I'm a past president of LAREG, a bunch of us are executive board members. We've all worked together in various capacities over the years, so it's a friendly group, and we hope that you'll ask us any questions you have on your mind. I'm going to start talking a little bit about my company and what I do. Everyone's going to do a little short presentation, and then we're all yours for Q&A. So again, I'm Scott Burman. My company's the Engel Burman Group. We are developers of various types of seniors housing products. Engel Burman's been in existence for about 20 years. I've been a partner for about 18 of the 20. We're full scope developers, builders, and property managers. So that's kind of unique. We do the development work, we find the properties, take them through the entitlement process. We also build all of our own properties and then manage most of the assets once they're completed. Locally, we've done over $2 billion in development, and if you add in the stuff that we've owned in other parts of the country, it's about $3 billion in total of diversified properties. So our scope of work, we're commercial landlords, so we own industrial, office, and retail properties. We're residential developers. We build a lot of multifamily housing under the brand name Seasons. Age restricted, 55 and older mostly, but we do a bunch of different product types, so we'll talk more about that. And then we're healthcare owners and operators. So we build, own, and operate the Bristol Assisted Living chain. And we recently entered into a brand new business called Wellbridge, which is a drug addiction research and rehabilitation business. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And then also, again, we're our own general contractors. I spent the first 12 years of my career on the development side of our business, so finding properties, taking them through the entitlement process, financing, all that type of stuff. The last 6 years, I've been managing our construction division. So I oversee a team of about 95 construction professionals, and we're managing about $1 billion in construction currently over 9 projects. So this is sort of our loose corporate structure. So the Engel Burman Group is our corporate entity. And then we have really 3 lines of business. We have a development company. Underneath the development company, we have in-house legal, and our CFO also sits at the development company and a team under him. The construction team, which again I oversee. And then we have a separate management company, offices out of Bohemia, and they're sort of the high-level management for our Bristol chain. We've got nearly 3,000 employees in that business, so that's a very high-level operating business. So first, real estate development. I know you guys have all studied real estate in different capacities, but I'll just take you through kind of the process really quickly. Some of these other guys are going to talk in a little more detail about what they do, which kind of aids this process. But essentially what we do is we go out, we have certain site selection criteria, we find properties that fit within that site selection criteria, and then we negotiate deals to purchase property. Typically, our deals have a lot of contingencies. We don't like to buy property unless it's entitled. So we'll sign a contract, we'll spend many years taking it through the entitlement process, that eventually we'll close and build on the land. So sometimes it could be a protracted negotiation. We sign contracts and we go into a due diligence phase. And then once that due diligence has expired, once we confirm that we're actually buying what we thought we were buying, we go into project planning. So we do a lot of market studies. We develop different product types for different markets, different unit mixes for different markets, depending exactly on what it is. And ultimately what we try and achieve is something called the highest and best use of the property. So where are we going to get the best bang for the buck for this particular site? After that's all been figured out, we go through a municipal entitlement process. I know Bram's going to talk much more about that. That's what he does. He's actually represented me on a number of deals. And typically it has 3 steps. So first we do the land use piece. Very rarely do you buy a piece of property on Long Island or in suburbia where it's zoned for what you want to do. So typically you go through a rezoning process. That can take a year, 2 years, even 3, depending on the site and how much opposition you might have. Once that's complete, then you've got what we call an as-of-use right, as-of-right use. And we do engineer site plans. We go through the town's engineering department to get approvals for site plan, and then ultimately submit full build construction documents for building permits. Along the way, there's all kinds of different governmental agencies we have to go through, like Health Department, Department of Transportation, and you name it. It takes us anywhere from 3 to 5 or 7 years to get a project approved here on Long Island, so it's a very protracted, long drawn-out process. And then at that point, we get into real construction documents, we get into estimating and value engineering and trying to figure out better ways, less expensive ways to build into the particular products. And then I just added a little bit at the bottom here, just so you guys understand the different areas of law that this touches on. So transactional law, tax law, finance law. Unfortunately, we get involved in litigation more times than I'd like to admit. Land use, lien law, environmental law is a very important component of what we do. So lots of the different things that you guys are studying are components of what we do every day. Our construction division, again, that's my day-to-day. We have 95 employees. We've got 9 active construction projects, a big pipeline behind that. So really, really active. We built out a tremendous team of people who come from Turners and Tishmans and big companies. Project manager at my shop could manage $300 million at any given time. And then once we build the properties, typically we also operate them. So again, our management company is called Ultimate Care Management, and they oversee a team of about 2,600 employees. So the Bristol. So the Bristol is our primary business. We have 18 operating properties across New York and New Jersey. When we entered into the business, assisted living on Long Island was very different from what we do. It was mostly converted hotels and motels and what I would consider to be sort of B and C properties. When we entered into the business, we really wanted to create a product that we feel very good about sending our own family members to. So we really sought out to elevate the product to create something that was high quality, and we really did create sort of the best in class. Bristol is really widely recognized as some of the best assisted living across the market, both here on Long Island and other places. We're at the point now where we've kind of saturated our markets. We're looking for other markets where we can build 4, 5, 6, set up a regional shop, and we'll report back here to New York. And the next market that we're actively pursuing is South Florida. Very similar demographic to New York, in some instances the same people. I think we'll have construction projects in South Florida in the next year or so. This is sort of shows our geographic scope. So you can see we've got properties all across Long Island, Westchester, New Jersey. We're building a bunch in New Jersey right now. We recently broke into the Manhattan market. One building on the Upper West Side, which we're renovating, and we are about to, actually we did break ground yesterday on a project on the Upper East Side, which is going to be a 14-story all-dementia care facility. For a long time, the industry didn't realize that assisted living works in urban areas. That's changing really quickly, and I think there's a tremendous growth opportunity for us in New York City and other urban environments. You guys may have driven past this one. This is a project we're building in Jericho. It's at 106, 107 in Jericho Turnpike. It's the largest assisted living building in the state of New York. It's 300,000 feet. It's enormous. Just to give you a frame of reference, that's 6.5 acres under a roof. We opened half the building and people are moving in rapidly. We're doing great. The other half will be open in the next month or so. I want to tell you quickly about this drug addiction business also. You can't turn on the news these days and not hear about the opioid crisis. Tremendous epidemic. It's going to cripple our country, could bankrupt our country if things don't change. It's particularly bad in Suffolk County. People come to Suffolk County to buy heroin to go sell it in other places because it's so cheap. New York State is a pretty toxic environment for opiates because they crack down heavily on the doctors who prescribe the pills, and people quickly turn to heroin because it's the same stimulant. And also, legal marijuana has forced a lot of the cartels into the heroin and opiate fentanyl business. So that's flooding our borders. We teamed up with Northwell Health, and we're building a project called Wellbridge. It's a really unique, different approach to drug addiction treatment in that it's research-based. So we're going to have teams of doctors, scientists, researchers on site studying our patients, studying the brain, and coming up with novel ways to treat addiction. And I say treat because we're approaching this really not as it used to be in the past, which was a moral failing, but treating addiction as a disease, which is really what it is. It affects the brain, it affects different people in different ways, and it really needs to be treated as a disease in today's day and age. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to quickly run you through some of our other projects. We build condos under the brand name Seasons, typically age-restricted, kind of Florida-style gated communities with big clubhouses. Screen left is a project we just finished in Seaford, 115 units. Sold out, completed last year. The one on the right, Seasons at Elwood, it's an ongoing construction project, also completely sold out. It'll all be delivered in the next year, and this is an aerial photograph of that construction site. You guys might recognize some of these properties. We built a big luxury condo called Aqua in Long Beach. Another condo built at Court in Garden City. These are high-end luxury condo projects. We did the Lifetime Fitness deal in Garden City. We've done quite a bit of retail development, Lowe's Home Improvement Center, Stop and Shop, a bunch of big box retail over the years too. So I'm going to conclude because I am out of time. I just want to mention also that we are going to have a paid internship program this summer. We're going to put together a class of about a dozen students who want to spend 10 weeks with us learning about what we do. Again, we do have an in-house legal team, so there'll be opportunities to work with them and also work across the various aspects of our business. So Rose Prisco's here. She's our internship coordinator. So if anyone has any interest, please come say hi to Rose.
You saw you fell right away. Jump around in your seat. So the reason why I'm using these boards is because when you work in municipalities, a lot of them are in the Stone Age. So PowerPoint presentations don't exist when you make zoning and land use presentations to boards. So we use actual hard paper. Okay. And just want everybody to know, whoever applies for Scott's internship will be applying after me. I'm resume number 1. But if I can't say enough about my fellow panelists again. As Scott said, we're friends, we're colleagues. They're a tremendous company to work for. Anybody who would apply there would be lucky to do so, as well as work with Michael or Joe. Debra, they're all wonderful people. So what I'm going to do is briefly bring you through a project that we worked on. You know, Scott's talking about 300,000 square foot buildings. This is a 2,100 square foot quick service Sonic drive-in that took 5 years to develop. And as Scott said, you don't buy anything as a smart developer on Long Island without a zoning contingency, because this is what happens when municipalities and residents have a certain idea about a way a property should be developed, contrary to the law. And it's a pleasure to speak to law students in a room that I once sat in many, many years ago. So, if you're familiar with this property, it's the Sonic Drive-In. It's in Smithtown. Maybe not the least corner. So this is the site, which is actually currently developed and functioning as a Sonic Drive-In now. This is a Google Earth image that we used at the time for the application itself. This is the Smith Haven Mall, and this is an existing restaurant called Ragazzi that was originally built as a Pizzeria Uno. The reason why I show you this is I was quoted in the paper as saying, if you can't build a Sonic on Middle Country Road across the street from a mall, where can you build one? So this is the site here. This is a Costco, and then you have here all these single-family homes, and this is where our opposition came from largely. Okay, so Scott talked a little bit about what it takes to get a project approved. These are the majority, but not all of the approvals that we had to go through, right? So you had to get a highway work permit from the New York State Department of Transportation. You had to go to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. You had to go to the Suffolk County Planning Commission. You had to go to the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, which takes care of the septic systems for sanitary. We had to go to the town of Smithtown, to the Zoning Board of Appeals for variances. We had to go to the Board of Site Plan Review for site plan approval. In the town of Smithtown, the town board, the elected officials, sit as the Board of Site Plan Review. So we were before that board. We had a public hearing before the Zoning Board of Appeals. We had a public hearing before the Board of Site Plan Review. We got to go to the building department to get a building permit eventually, 5 years later. And then in between that, there's litigation, which I'm going to talk about. But we had to deal with extensively on a day-to-day basis with the planning department, who's in charge of the site itself, the grading and the drainage and the landscaping. And the landscaping became important because at the very end, the town wanted trees and more trees and trees where the trees were and next to the trees and between the trees, lots of trees. Which already in a landscape buffer area, I mean, you saw the aerial before, you saw what it looked like. So I show you this because this is where the problems came from. This is the Sonic and Deer Park. In the red it says Sonic Deer Park. You may or may not know of this site. This was the first Sonic on Long Island. This site opened to an incredible amount of interest, and what I mean by interest, I mean by cars down the street. So that was Sonic when it was opening. That's Deer Park Avenue, and those are the line of cars coming into the site. I have a few pictures like this. That's a, if you go back, you'll see here, there's a retail center here. See this long interior roadway? Those cars are lined up in that long interior roadway. This was really the first application. This is 2012, 2011. It's the first application that really saw the internet. Now, again, this was really before Facebook became an organizing site for communities, but these are screenshots from YouTube. So basically, people took videos of what Sonic looked like when it opened in Deer Park, and the opposition to our application in Smithtown used these videos to convince the zoning board that an opening of a Sonic at the property would be not something that was welcome in their community. So this is another picture of those cars, and then I think, yeah, this one's my favorite. It's really hard to tell, but if you go and if you just Google on YouTube like Sonic Deer Park, you'll see videos of kids, you're all in law school now, so younger kids maybe, hanging out the top of convertibles and videotaping themselves online to get into the Sonic when it opened. And this is what our opposition brought to the board. And this is what we had to deal with primarily at the public hearing. So a couple of things I want to say about that public hearing before the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I'll show you over here. This is literally what one of the things that we use. We bring a color rendering. This is a colored site plan of the site. We like to make it nice and green and colorful so that the images really pop out of it. This is obviously a top-down view. And this is that buffer area that I'm showing you. These areas here are existing vegetation. These are what we were proposing to add. By the time the project was done, this whole thing was covered. But this is one of the props that I used at the public hearing. It's so old that some of the glue is coming up. But there's another thing that's behind it, which I hope you'll find very interesting. So this property is zoned WSI, which is wholesale and service industry. It's zoned for a few pretty intense uses, some of which are car sales and machine repair. So if you live behind it, you might rather have a Sonic than a machine repair or a car sale or a power equipment sale. I only got 2 minutes left. Oh boy. All right. So you might want that instead. But no, these residents did not. One of the things that the town tried to use as their argument against our case was that we did not fit the definition of a counter-service restaurant in that zone. So what probably one of the most brilliant associates we've ever had, who sat in your seats, who was a Hofstra night school student, which is why I thought this would be interesting, who was working with us at the time, came up with this idea. Go to the board and bring them the exact definition of a counter-service restaurant and show them individually how you meet the criteria. And this was, again, someone who was sitting in your seat came up with this idea, and I wanted to just use that as an example of, maybe you'll come work with us one day. We're always hiring. If you have an interest in zoning and land use, come to us, development or real estate finance or title. But when you're going in the working environment, and certainly in a law firm, don't be afraid to think out of the box, and don't be afraid to come with well-reasoned and thoughtful ideas. Don't just throw things against the wall, as they say. But this was a brilliant idea. We brought it to the hearing. It didn't get us approved, but it was very ultimately, because we only have a little bit of time, we had to win in litigation. And I'll just go real quick because these are fun. This was an article in Long Island Business News, uphill skate, about some of the issues that we were having in Wisconsin and Smithtown. This was before we got denied by the board. There you go, zoning board blows up Sonic restaurant plans, local press, this is what the local paper said about us, Sonic shot down by Smithtown zoning board, and then after we won in litigation, there you go, Sonic restaurant gets green light, and new Sonic to open in Smithtown. So, and I just have some quick pictures here of the site itself. These were taken last week in the early morning. It's built, it's open, it's operating, it's fabulous. If you haven't been there, go there and try it. I just want to say one last thing about the litigation. We knew we had an extensive community outreach program. We had people knocking on doors. I'm going to be real quick. We had people knocking on doors. We set up a dedicated email address and a dedicated phone number for people to call with comments. The community didn't really want to engage, but ultimately it was proven to the board, which again still denied us, but the court most importantly, that we had done our outreach. And we knew then from having done the outreach and the fact that we really got stonewalled from having deep conversations with the residents that we were going to litigation. So our entire presentation to that zoning board of appeals was done with the purposes of winning the approvals in court. We had a real estate expert, we had a traffic expert, we had a professional engineer, we even had a sound expert talk about the fact that the residents who lived behind the property would not hear the speakers from from those drive-in windows. The fact that we had 22 of those, but you could only hear them the furthest point 50 feet away, and the residents were more than 100 feet away. So we had our entire presentation geared toward litigation, and I have copies. I have 30 copies here of the decision from the Supreme Court. And the last thing I'll say about it is, if there are more students, I can give you the site real quick. It's 990 New York State 2nd, 440. That's 990 NYS 2D 440. Although I have the decisions here. And basically, what this decision stood for, and it's really an important case and one of the leading cases when it comes to defeating community opposition. It basically said generalized community opposition cannot defeat expert testimony. And that if the board wants to deny an application, it cannot rely just on YouTube videos and a bunch of hysterical residents getting up there and saying all these horrible things are going to happen in my neighborhood because we're bringing a quick service restaurant. That's it. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Yes, outline. Here we go. Perfect.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike DiLeo. I'm a partner at a law firm in Belleville called Bram and Altman. And our firm handles all aspects of commercial real estate law. Two of my partners practice in the same area that Bram does, zoning and land use, which from I don't do it, it's an incredibly difficult area to practice. I'll tell you that right now. It's working through how many municipalities, the hundreds of towns, villages, 2 cities on the island, plus dealing with Nassau and Suffolk counties. Yeah, it's incredible. And each one has its own separate code and own separate set of rules and separate boards that you have to negotiate through. So the good news for you guys is that you need lawyers to do that. And that's a great area of law practice. The 2 other areas of law that we practice in litigation and commercial transactions, and that's where I come in. But actually, before I jump in to tell you what I do, I want to thank Professor Hofstra and Judge Prudente for putting this together, because this is actually a great forum to discuss real estate and land use on Long Island, which is not something that you guys study directly, but you study different aspects of it. And Long Island is the biggest small town in America, and it's incredibly difficult to get real estate projects done here, from entitlement to construction to financing. You have roadblocks everywhere, and you have a lot of different professionals that work together to help achieve that goal. So thank you for putting this together. So what I do from day to day is I represent banks. Once you have a project that you want to build or that is built and you want to maybe finance to take some money out to do some improvements, or maybe even other real estate investments, the developer interfaces with the bank to get financing. So my job is, once the business terms are agreed to between the bank and the borrower, I take that and translate it into loan documents, and I kind of take it through closing. And there are a few different aspects of what I do. If I boil it down, I need to translate the approval into loan documents. So that involves a lot of contract work, obviously. Every document that you draft is a contract, and it has to be enforceable that way. I need to make sure that the borrower has the authority to do what he's doing, to do what it is doing. It's entering into a transaction. Who's the borrower? Is it an LLC? Is it a single member LLC? Do I just need one person's okay on the borrower's side to do this? Is it a layered LLC where you have ownership in different levels of LLCs, so you have to sort of peel back the onion to find out whether they can do this transaction or not? Is it a corporation? Who are the shareholders? Who are the officers, directors? So you have this aspect of understanding business organization. So if anyone takes a biz org class or anything like that, that's extremely important, because if you don't have a properly authorized action on the borrower's side, if you're ever in court in front of a judge, which these loans will go in front of a judge, because you're going to litigate them at some point, hopefully not, but as the economy turns, you end up litigating them more and more. You're going to have to tell a judge, well, judge, this was authorized. How is it authorized? And you have to explain it, and you have to back it up, and you have to make sure that it's bulletproof. So that's a big part of what we do. The bank loans money, doesn't just hope that it gets paid back, it actually takes collateral. So collateral can be in the form of real estate, which we take, the bank will take a mortgage on real estate. It can be in the form of a security interest in assets, accounts receivable, inventory, machinery, things like that. We have to secure that. We have to make sure it's secure. So anyone who's taking secure transactions, I deal with that every day. Just on the way over here, had a phone call with a client who the bank handles their own UCC filings. A closing from 2 years ago, the bank didn't file their UCC filing. They were asking me, what does that mean to me? Do I have a problem? Yeah, you have a problem. You're not perfected, right? So you deal with that stuff every day. And as in representing a bank, you need to be able to make sure that they're, again, bulletproof. That's the word we use in our office all the time. You've got to make sure that they are squared away and their collateral is secure. With real estate, what do we need to do? We need to make sure that the real estate that the bank takes is clear, no clouds on title. That's where we plug in with Deb and Joe and their company Advantage Title, which is fantastic. We have to work to make sure there are no liens, there are no old mortgages that haven't been paid. You'd be surprised. You think to yourself, wow, guy owns a property, he wants to finance, he wants to put a mortgage on it. What could possibly go wrong? A whole host of things can go wrong. You have judgments that attach as liens on the property. You have, if it's a construction loan, you have mechanics liens. Maybe a contractor hasn't been paid. So these are all things that pop up, and you as a bank attorney need to be able to deal with. And like I said, these areas, these things that you're studying here, all come into play when you jump in and represent banks. And also, actually, a very big thing that I haven't mentioned is understanding the zoning and land use process. As a bank attorney, I need to know this property, whatever's going on at the property, do they have the right to do what they're doing on the property? Are there open permits? Are there COs they don't have? Are they changing their use from a use that's not that intensive to a more intensive use? So they're going to need a parking variance. So they're going to need, what are they going to need from the municipality And how long is it going to take? Because if, God forbid, my bank makes the loan and has to foreclose, it's going to step into the shoes, and they're going to have to take whatever action and spend whatever money to get the approvals that they need to get to be able to resell this property. So all of these things come into play in representing a bank. It's a pretty robust industry right now on the island. We're in a prolonged good part of the economy, so there's a lot of commercial lending going on, so there's a lot of need for attorneys that are in this real estate development field. So I know I'm tight on time, so I'll leave it for questions afterwards. But thank you for having me.
Hi, I am Joe Willen, President and CEO of Advantage Title, or Title Advantage if you prefer. And I want to thank Hofstra Law and LIREG, this wonderful charity that we're involved with, this partnership that they have formed, which I think is just so great for students like you, and for putting this great program together. I've really enjoyed it so far, and I hope you have too, and found it useful. But I mean, we have to be honest. You guys, you came here to learn about title insurance. I mean, let's be honest. That's the exciting field. These guys, what they do is a little boring. But but seriously, how many of you know anything about title insurance? Raise your hands, honestly. Wow, just kind of what I expected. Well, if you're going to be practicing attorneys, if you're ever going to do a real estate transaction, you are going to have to know about title insurance. Not that you'll learn it all here today, but there's certainly a lot of important things for you to know. And I'm not sure about Hofstra, but in most law schools, if you're lucky, you're going to spend about 15 minutes learning about title insurance in a transactional class in 3 years of law school. And to really put the mystery of title insurance into perspective, I've been in business for 31 years. I have 85 employees. We've insured billions of dollars of transactions throughout the country and internationally as well. We've won numerous awards in our industry, and yet my 3 kids, who are young adults at this point, say to me all the time, "Hey, Dad, what the hell do you do again?" And we've been doing this dance forever, since my middle daughter was in first grade. She had a project at school, what do your mom and dad do? And she came home and she wrote in her project, "My mom is a lawler, L-A-W-L-O-R, and my dad's a worker guy." So, I'm the worker guy, and that's why I get the big bucks. I'm going to be brief about title insurance and let my wonderful General Counsel, Debra Thompson, go into that a little bit more when I'm done. So, title insurance, what is title insurance and why is it important? Well, first off, it paid for my kids' college and upcoming graduate school, and to be honest with you, it's provided me with a pretty good life. That is a Curb Your Enthusiasm reference for any of you who have been raised properly. But I digress. A title insurance policy protects the purchaser's and lender's interest in real property. The title policy covers you or your client for not only a loss or claim under the policy, but for the attorney's fees paid in case of litigation. And there is usually litigation, which, as you can imagine, is quite expensive. An example would be if Scott were to purchase a large piece of property from a limited liability corporation or an LLC, and after he purchases, a member of that LLC sues him saying that they never agreed to the sale. Now you have a claim. With the title insurance policy in place, the title company will come in and defend title and pay for the attorney's fees. I know, this is funny. And if you don't, by the way, not only are they the cutest kids I've ever seen, but how the hell are they just sitting there quiet? My kids would have torn this place up. It's unbelievable. Why do we have to be here? It's some work. But to let you know how important title insurance is, you will occasionally encounter a client who will not, as a practicing attorney, who will not want to buy title insurance. They can say, "What do I need that for?" Some Native American, hopefully they say that, is going to come and say that they own this property. "Come on, I don't want to buy this." And you are going to have to get them to sign an affidavit saying that you told them to buy title insurance, because if not, you are liable to be sued for malpractice. So it's really important. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our history. I'm not an attorney. but my wife is. Actually, she's a photographer with a law license. Well, actually, that expired about 20 years ago. But my father is a retired judge, still going strong at 91. And he was hoping that I go to law school, but I had much bigger plans. So after graduating from Ithaca College, I went to Europe. First I worked on a lobster boat to make the money to go to Europe, and then I went to Europe. And then after that, I decided to go coach crew at Ithaca College. And it was a great salary, it was $0. This is as a college graduate, but I did get a real job as a teaching assistant at an elementary school for $3.80 an hour. As you can imagine, my parents were so proud. At a certain point, I realized that 4 nights a week at Wendy's was not going to get it done. So I came back to Long Island, started Real Life, and I answered an ad for title insurance sales. And I had no idea what title insurance was. However, they offered me a company car, and I had no wheels. So I took the job, knowing nothing about it. 2 years later, in 1987, I quit that job, and I started Advantage Title with 2 employees and a couple of typewriters. Yes, typewriters. They did not even have computers at the time, except the big NASA ones, and that wasn't going to work. I had just turned 25. Pretty naive at that time. But it's all worked out better than I could have possibly dreamed. So, as I said earlier, we've been in business now for 31 years. We have 5 in-house counsel, including Debra Thompson. We handle extremely complex commercial transactions and residential transactions throughout the country. And we have a very unique and diverse business model, which has helped put us at the top of our field. And that model is very much like a law firm. So firms like Bram and Michaels might do real estate, zoning, estate planning, corporate law, tax certiorari, matrimonial, and more. The idea is to offer your clients different expertise in the same firm, to create revenue streams, to add value, and to make sure your clients don't go to any other law firms if you can. Title companies don't usually work like that, but we do. We think it's a great model, and while most title companies only offer title insurance, we offer foreclosure services, legal services, mortgage, and settlement services. So we have 5 different companies in the Advantage Group. This diversification strategy has paid off in a big way as we've essentially become recession-proof. As foreclosure work, if you think about it, does very well in a poor real estate market, whereas title insurance companies usually do well in a good real estate market. An example of this is in the Great Recession of 2008, while you all were hoping to get your braces off soon, begging your parents for flip phones, we were getting killed in real estate. But thanks to our diversification strategy, our foreclosure business quadrupled during that time. And while we weren't happy to see people lose their homes, it's good to have different revenue streams in difficult markets. Our clients are typically, as a title company, lawyers like yourselves soon, law firms, real estate developers, REITs, which are real estate investment trusts, lenders, hedge funds, and more. And before I turn it over to Debra and finish, I just want to give a little plug for real estate as a career. Obviously, you guys have interest in real estate or you wouldn't be here. But those of us up here, we just love it. We think it's a wonderful career. And whether you decide to be a practitioner like Bram or Michael, or you decide to be an in-house counsel for a title company like Debra, or a real estate developer like Scott, or a president and CEO of a title company like me, real estate is such a great career. It's always interesting, it's always changing, it's never boring, and I believe more wealth has been created in real estate than just about any field that I can think of, and yet they really don't provide a whole lot of schooling for it. You see a million MBAs, but you rarely see masters in real estate. I was very happy to see that Hofstra does have a combined JD MBA program where you can specialize in real estate. It's a 4-year program, I believe. Is anybody in this room in that program? Wow. I think it's a great way to really prepare young attorneys to pursue this complex and interesting field. So feel free to speak to Debra or me afterward if you have any interest in title. And I'm now going to turn it over to my wonderful general counsel, Debra Thompson.
Good afternoon. Thank you also, Professor Hofstra, for putting this together, Allison, and the students as well. I never had anything like this when I went to law school. In fact, I don't recall ever learning about title insurance. So I'm
because I didn't even know what it was. When I was graduating law school, I was trying to figure out what I was interested in doing. And I always thought that I would do something litigation-wise, but somebody sort of pushed me in the direction of real estate, and I ended up at a title company, not even really knowing what title insurance was. But I have grown to love it, and it's an amazing field, like Joe said, to be in real estate, but specifically in title insurance. I did work for a couple of other companies early on in my career, and then I got an opportunity to work at a firm. I was living in the city for several years. I worked in litigation and some real estate transactional work, but there was always this sort of pull to come back to title insurance. So when I moved back here to Long Island, I reached out to Joe, not even knowing him at all, and set my resume in blindly, and I
Best cover letter ever.
Yes, we talk about my cover letter like all the time, apparently.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about law school. You get to be a really great writer and hopefully a good public speaker. So no matter what field you go into, you have those skills that will transfer into anything that you do. So, and I've been working for Joe for, it'll be 15 years in April, and
I'm pretty impressed with that.
and I really love what I do. And just to get a sense of, so you can get a sense of sort of a perspective of like how I fit into all of this, the title company is a part of the real estate transaction. So if you guys are practicing attorneys, if you have a client calls you up and says, hey, by the way, I'm going to buy a house, and you know, I've got this great deal, this little old lady owned a house, she passed away, and I'm buying it for her from her kids. Well, what does that really mean, you're buying it from her kids? So you call up Mike DiLeo, he's going to represent you in the purchase, or Bram, and he negotiates the contract. Well, they don't actually investigate to figure out who really are you supposed to be buying the property from. Did the person die with a will? Or is there no will? Are you buying for just the heirs? Who are the kids? Who should be selling the property? An executor or trustee? What were the provisions in the will? So you guys will learn about stuff in your estates and trust classes about different types of bequests and devises and wills. So was it a specific request? Did it say, I give my property at 123 Main Street in Northport to my son Bob? Or does it just say, all my real property goes to all of my children? Those things make a difference, because those things will determine who's the proper party to actually convey the property to. So my job is to actually evaluate. That's what title insurance people do. We check the public records, we go to the surrogate's court. If there's litigation, like foreclosure or bankruptcy, we check all the court actions. We make a determination as who is the proper party to actually sell that property to your client. As a purchaser's attorney, Mike or Bram, they're not going to the court. They're not looking at that. They're relying on us to do that investigation and figure out who's the proper party. So my part of this is that if I'm working with Mike and he's representing a lender, there are other things that I look at, such as he said his mortgage documents, those are those contract documents that he's working on. What's the structure of the transaction? Things can be very different, whether it's a residential property or a commercial property. Some of the commercial properties obviously are more complex. If I'm working with Bram and he's working on some big development deal, maybe there's some access issues. Maybe he needs an easement over someone else's property so that he can have people coming through the new development getting over to the public road. So these are things that we work on together. You really do use what you learned in law school in title insurance. You learn, like I said, estate planning. Some of you might end up going into elder care law, and you're drafting documents such as trusts. Many people now, as they get older, transfer their property into a trust because it's a way of protecting the asset. It's also a way to avoid probate, because probate can be very expensive. As a buyer's attorney, you're not getting a copy of the trust agreement of the seller because it's private. It's not a matter of public record. My job is to review that and make sure that the person that's going to be signing the deed and transferring title to that property is the appropriate person. Like I said, I have to have knowledge of bankruptcy codes, mortgage foreclosure statutes. Also, Mike mentioned looking at documents such as the governing documents for corporations, for limited liability companies, partnerships, limited partnerships. Who can that entity enter into the transaction, whether it be to sell or to make a mortgage? What kind of approval do you need from the members of that limited liability company? Who can sign the documents on behalf of the company? Remember, these are documents that are binding the company. They're making a mortgage on a property. That's the collateral. That's what's being secured buy that mortgage. It's my job to review that, because at the end of the day, what we're providing is a policy of title insurance. So when you get a deed to your home, that's the document that says, hi, you own this piece of property. But what the policy is protecting your interest in that property. We're saying, hey, we're not just saying you got a deed, we're saying you're the owner and no one else has an interest. And in the event that somebody was to pop up, like Joe said, if Scott bought a property from a limited liability company and not all the members approved that sale, and Scott gets sued, Scott doesn't want to pay the legal fees to defend his ownership interest. That's where the title company comes into play. That policy is your contract with the title insurance company. You would be recovering for a loss. Let's say you completely lost the property, you get paid out based on your what the value is of the property. And if for some reason there was an appropriate course of action was to do litigation, we're paying all the litigation fees. And the litigation fees can be more than the policy. So if you buy a house for $500,000, but then there's litigation that goes on, and the litigation costs $600,000, the title company is paying for that. You're not. So that's why it's so important to have title insurance. On some of the larger, I work primarily on commercial transactions, but I also work on high-end residential transactions out in the Hamptons. So all of these different types of properties have different types of issues, different types of things that have to be addressed. When you have the high-end commercial properties, you have more sophisticated parties in the transaction. You have sophisticated business people, like with Scott, they own property all over. They own property all over New York, Long Island, they own property out of state. There are other types of coverages, not just the standard title policy, that title companies can offer. So there are what we call them in our world, endorsements. Think of them as riders. So if you get a car insurance policy or a homeowner's insurance policy, there might be some additional coverages that you want. And so you maybe add some additional riders. You might pay more for those, but they're giving you some additional coverage that you need. When you get to the more complex commercial transactions, for instance, let's say Scott and all his partners are looking to develop a property. One of his partners is looking to, sell his interest. He doesn't want to be in the business anymore. And you represent somebody who's an investor wanting to come in and say, I want to get in on this. I'm willing to put up some money. I'd like to be a partner in this transaction. So you have somebody in Scott's team that says, I'm looking to get out, I want to retire. You have your client wants to come in. So you have an incoming guy and you have an outgoing guy. What ends up happening is the incoming, you as an attorney representing the incoming, is saying, I understand the importance of title insurance, but I also understand that even though it's not that I don't trust the people that I'm going to be going into business with, I want some extra protection. I want to know that if there's something that the existing people know about that could potentially result in the denial of a claim under a policy of title insurance, I don't want that to be attributed to me. I don't want the knowledge of somebody else being imputed to me. So there's actually a separate endorsement, a rider, that you can actually add to the title policy that gives you that additional coverage. This is very, very common when you're dealing with high-end commercial transactions. For someone like Mike, who might be representing lenders, there are also additional endorsements that give them additional protection. So just to sort of sum up, because I'm sure I'm on time, I just wanted to mention that, like Joe said, the company's been in business for over 30 years. We have worked on some really phenomenal projects. I personally have worked on some really important and really cool projects here on Long Island. Last year, we worked on a transaction that was a multi-site transaction involving 85 different properties on Long Island, the city, and in New Jersey. Because we also do, like Joe said, we do stuff outside of New York as well. That involved gas stations. It was phenomenal. It was a huge financing portfolio of this one particular client's, most of what they own. Last Friday, we just closed on a deal that was a multi-million-dollar financing for construction of a brand new senior citizens apartment complex. And probably one of the coolest deals I ever worked on was here on Long Island. It was construction for a brand new state-of-the-art building that was housing a software company that really was bringing sort of the Silicon Valley feel here to Long Island. And what was great was, it's off of the LIE. I would drive by it all the time, and I kind of viewed it affectionately as my building because I had worked so hard on it. And what was really cool about it was that I watched it getting constructed. I was actually invited to the grand opening. It has really amazing amenities for the people that work there. They have a basketball court, volleyball court, yoga studio, gaming room. It's a real techie kind of place. And I still think of it as my building when I drive by it. So, but you know, like all of these guys have mentioned, we all work together. We've all worked together over the years and on different projects. Even though the real estate industry is, you know, it's a big industry, it seems smaller because a lot of us work together over and over on different projects. So, thank you.
Thank you all for sharing your time and experiences with us today. Sometimes as a law student, you might not know all the depths and areas of real estate law, so I think that this panel is very helpful to at least let us know that those opportunities are out there. And Barbara, we'll start with the questions.
Yeah, so we asked a few students from our Real Estate Law Association to kind of send us in some questions beforehand to kind of get this discussion going. So I guess the first question that we have for all the panelists is, what has been the biggest challenge in developing real estate on Long Island lately? And where do you see the future going for developments on real estate?
It's continually getting more and more difficult. As was referenced in one of the presentations, we have over 600 municipalities on Long Island. When we first started doing development projects, we get a project approved in 2-3 years. Now it takes 5, 6, 7 years. Because the municipalities are so small, you've got politicians that win and lose elections by slim margins, and they can be swayed very easily by public opinion. So you get civic groups and other interested parties who come and protest projects on a regular basis, school districts that protest projects on a regular basis, and again, a room full of hostile local residents can sway a project in one way or the other. And it's part of the reason, frankly, that we're doing less and less on Long Island than to other places, because there's other areas of the country where they welcome developers' investments with open arms, and it's just not the case here, unfortunately. So I would say the most difficult part is the approval process, the stuff that Bram handles, and it's not getting easier, it's getting more and more difficult.
I'd like to add to that, if it's okay. I'm not a developer, but I did develop my headquarters in Huntington. We had a 30,000 square foot building that was our headquarters, and we ground leased it to TD Bank a few years ago in Huntington Village. If you guys are near the Paramount, it's right on the corner. And so here we have a commercially zoned district and an office building, which was going from 30,000 square feet to 4,000 square feet, from 100-something employees that I had parking all over the town to 8 employees that TD had. And it took us 4 years to get this done. It was ridiculous. I got a taste of being a developer, and it wasn't a very good taste, I have to say. And frankly, this is a larger discussion because I think the Amazon debacle is sort of a similar, but obviously much larger problem, in that we sometimes let the, what do you call them, the vocal minority scream and yell, and their NIMBYism and everything else that they do to stop good projects that are good economically, that are good for towns. That, of course, I did get my deal approved, and the bank has been nothing but a plus for the village. And the Amazon thing, to me, is an absolute debacle, and we all lose when we had a gift handed to us with 25,000 jobs, high-paying jobs, and so on and so forth, because we let these sort of NIMBYs, stop us. And something has to be done. I think the Long Island community, in particular, developers, are trying to get together and really work on making sure that our voices are heard. We should be able to organize better than the neighborhoods, but somehow we're getting beat a lot, it seems to me.
So it's also very interesting because, as I mentioned before, the one application that I showed you, which really was one of the first that saw some sort of new technology, relatively newish, YouTube, brought and used by an opposition. Since that time, we've seen apps created that help neighbors organize. We've seen Facebook basically come the wild, wild west of people being able to post whatever they want, a lot of untruths, a lot of misinformation. So we've even seen the progression over the past 5 or so years. My father, who's sitting in the front row, who's been doing this for 40 years, saw it from when community opposition was organized through leaflets, which is still sometimes done. We're now seeing a complete revolution in community organization. So it's one of the things also I think that you can bring into whatever firms that you go into, or you go into businesses. I mean, all of us, these guys all look young. They're not, trust me. I'm certainly not either. But we're learning, and we have to
You think
adapt.
I look young to them?
Yeah. But we have to learn and adapt. But these are skills that you can bring into firms and companies and say, look, this is what my friends are using. This is what even my parents are talking to their neighbors about, and this is how these are the technologies that we're using to teach us and to show us how best to combat what really on the internet is, like I said, a spreading of misinformation.
I'll add one perspective to this. We're all in this environment, and we all fight through it every day. So we're used to what goes on online and what we have to do. Scotty, you mentioned looking outside of Long Island for development projects because, quite frankly, it's easier. We have some clients that actually are looking to go the other way. They're looking to come to Long Island to develop, and we've spoken to folks that have incredibly ambitious rollout projects, 50 sites within 2 years, and we sit them down and we say, hold on a second. Let me tell you what each project is going to entail. The size of your building, you want a 6,000 square foot retail store? Well, you'll probably get a 2,000 square foot retail store. And they say, what are you talking about? So folks that are coming from out of state to Long Island really see the problems, and it's a great contrast between the folks that are involved in it on a day-to-day basis and the folks that aren't, as to what types of hurdles and how huge the hurdles are to develop here. So that's why it's important for all of us to sort of be on our game and to be ready to deal with all of these problems that face us in Long Island.
Thank you very much. What are the qualities and experience that you look for in a candidate for an internship or a summer associate?
I think so. I do a lot of hiring for our firm, and everything I've learned about hiring, I learned from my father. We look for someone who is passionate about what we do, not someone who's just trying to figure out what they want to do in law. Someone who says, I want to, even if it's not necessarily zoning and land use work, but I want to do commercial real estate. I have a passion for commercial real estate. So it's having a passion, because I think no matter what you do, and what any of us do here, you have a passion for it, and a willingness to put the time in, then you will be successful. So it's a lot of the buzzwords you hear: drive, determination, certainly focus, but a passion. Because ultimately, if you're doing something you're not passionate about, you're not going to do it right.
I'll jump in here too. This is actually a good point for me. I'm interviewing someone at 5 o'clock this afternoon. So, we constantly see people who are either just coming out of law school, maybe 2 years out, 3 years out, 5 years out, and you certainly have to know your stuff. You've got to be smart. That goes without saying. But so many things happen when you're practicing, whether it's at a closing table, something goes wrong, you're in front of a board and they ask you a crazy question that you didn't expect. You've got to be able to think on your feet, and not only think on your feet, but look like you know what you're talking about while you're thinking on your feet. So, having that ability to take something take a situation that's a little out of control and just try to deal with it and work at it, not get frazzled. We all get presented with things that we don't know as you go through this. You just have to be able to think on your feet and get through it.
So I've hired probably 60 people over the past 6 years. I've got 3 recruiting firms working for me at any given time. It's probably the hardest part of what I do is finding good quality. And above all else, when I'm looking to hire someone, I'm looking for somebody who's going to fit in properly to my corporate culture. Someone who's going to mix well with the people that I have employed already, and someone who's really going to help work as a team and drive the business forward.
I'll just add to that all of what these guys have said are so important, so I'm not going to repeat them. We also feel very strongly about the person themselves, the integrity of that person, the attitude of that person. It's remarkable how you find in a business environment. We all spend a lot of time together. There's stress in any industry, for sure in real estate with deadlines and a lot of money at stake and all that. And if you have people come in who are selfish or have bad attitudes, who spread negativity, it spreads like a cancer, and we won't have it. So it's so important to have positive people, real, I'm not talking BS, real people who are positive, want to be part of something. Corporate culture is everything to me as well, Scott. And if you fit in, you have a great opportunity for a great career. But if you are in any way negative, you'll never last in my organization. And I'm sure most organizations feel that way.
We also wanted to take a few questions out from the audience, if anyone has any questions.
Actually, this is for the whole panel, but what would you say some of the aspects of real estate law are that you really enjoy, and what are some aspects that you're not so keen on, or that you find more difficult to deal with on a regular basis?
So in what I do, and I alluded to it a little bit before, which is the law on the books. So it was mentioned before, we have municipalities, right? So we have county laws that we have to follow when it comes to certain aspects of the development. We've got town laws, if you're in a village, you have a village law. So each municipality that you're working in that has primary jurisdiction, be it a village or a town or a city, has its own laws. When the law is clear as to what you can or cannot do, and then a board arbitrarily denies. So that's exactly what we had here in this case. It was an arbitrary denial by a board, even though we were legally justified in, and were able to prove it as to what our client could develop. So the positive aspects are when a court can see clearly right from wrong, and that a decision made by a board was wrong. The frustrating part is when a board is arbitrary. And why? Because it costs your client time and money. And you might, people who are not lawyers would say, well, you get to make more money then, you get to go to litigation. You don't want that, right? I mean, the situation Michael's talking about here about people wanting to come to Long Island. We want business here. We want good economic development. We want jobs. I've spoken to plenty of people that have said, I'm not coming to Long Island. I hear what it's like to try and develop on Long Island. So we don't want to have to win the approvals for our clients in court. We want to win them at the board level. That's what I think is the frustrating part. And when it happens at the board level, it's tremendous because it'll save you 6 months, a year, and your clients lots of money.
Okay, sorry, I guess I'm a certain moderator's privilege or something, but I was interested in, Joe, in your take on the Amazon debacle, and so I was just curious to hear from the rest of you what your thoughts are on it and where is it going, and the role of the state perhaps in kind of pushing it through. Whoever wants to.
I haven't followed it all that closely. I know that the governor and the state senate are pointing fingers at each other. Everybody's very frustrated that we lost this opportunity. There's a $30 billion potential opportunity for the region. Had ripple effects all across Long Island and the surrounding areas. 25,000 well-paid employees that were coming here would have bought homes, would have invested in our communities. I mean, probably the single largest economic driver we would have seen in who knows how many years, a single crowning achievement of the current administration. And it's a shame. It's just an example of how real estate, well, not real estate, but how politics can go so wrong, right? You have this tremendous opportunity, and a couple people made a couple bad moves, and it just evaporated on us. So it's just a shame.
And really, ultimately, in this situation, if you distill it down to here, it's a larger discussion about economic incentives and incentivizing companies. And look, we live and work in a very expensive part of the country to do business. Our regulations are high. Our taxes are extraordinarily high. To get companies to invest here, even the largest company in the world by market cap, you do need some incentives. And the idea here is that these were performance-based incentives, and that's the one thing I think that's been confused about this process. People talk about, oh, we were giving them $3 billion. We weren't giving them $3 billion. We were giving them $3 billion of incentives if they met certain benchmarks when it came to economic development and job creation. And those $3 billion would have turned into $28 billion of overall investment in economic activity. And that's really what the shame of this is that those incentives were not coming to the company unless they met their benchmarks. And for all the reasons that Scott just said, it is a shame for our entire region, and certainly Long Island. We can't let that mistake happen again.
I agree with everything that's been said. It's terrible. it absolutely is the example of politics winning over progress. I'm sure Bram said it when he was talking about his presentation before boards. Small, vocal, negative feedback is louder than a bigger majority in favor of the project. Unfortunately, that wins out sometimes. And this was a swing and a miss, plain and simple.
And it hurts us going forward too, because the impression out there is that New York is anti-business right now. That it's become so progressive, not getting political here, but that we are sort of anti-business, and that's something we certainly don't want on Long Island. Long Island has enough problems as it is, and we have young people leaving. We're trying to get them to stay. I think Long Island is phenomenal. It's expensive, but it's such a wonderful place with so many great resources, beaches in the city and the Hamptons, and all kinds of great things, and people like Scott and the Recklers, and a lot of these people are doing great things to try to attract people. And then something like this happens, and it's a concern. It's a real concern.
Any other questions?
Sorry to shift gears away from Amazon. Thank you. I think a couple of you mentioned, Ms. Thompson and Mr. Willen, that you kind of just fell into the real estate industry. We're very lucky at Hofstra. I think we have a real estate transaction class that I took, and a land use class. But other than that, what are the resources that you use to get yourself acclimated to the real estate business, whether it's like trade publications or certain books or websites? What are the best resources for students to learn more about the real estate industry?
I honestly think that the best way is to get entrenched in the community itself. This charity group that we're all involved with, we're on the executive board of the Long Island Real Estate Group, offers tremendous networking opportunities. What I would tell you is the best thing to do is just get out there, join some groups, meet some people, talk to people, interact with people, start to understand what they do and how they do it and how they started their careers. Everybody's got a different story, and a lot of them are really interesting.
So I remember when I was coming to Long Island, I had started a big firm in the city. When I was coming to Long Island to practice, my father tells me to go look and try and learn all these 600 different municipalities we have on Long Island. And I'm looking at this org chart of like counties and village of the branch, the village of the what? I mean, I had grown up on Long Island my whole life, and I had no idea about some of the places on Long Island that were so minute when it comes to jurisdiction. So there's certain ways of publications that you should look at. Certainly networking, getting involved in a charity, a cause that's important to you. Be it real estate or not be real estate. Let it be some health issue, God forbid, that someone in your family has. But get involved in something, your local religious organization, something that you can meet people and talk to them and learn about them, and they can learn about you, and just never stop learning. The positive part about the internet is we have a lot of news sources that are available to us. Read the Wall Street Journal, read Crane's Business, whatever resources they have here, just always continue to be learning. And when you're practicing law, learn, because we do real estate. So even though I'm doing zoning and land use and I'm appearing before boards on Long Island, I'm still reading about Amazon. And I'm still trying to learn constantly about business, about real estate in general, about the market. Just always continue to be learning and always remain curious. That's the greatest thing that I think that you can always take with you, because you can always find time to sit and read something and learn something new.
Hopefully also you'll find a good mentor at a firm, because you really need to spend time. Unfortunately, it's the hands-on experience is the greatest teacher, of course, and if you have a good mentor who can show you the ropes a little bit, and then get yourself out there, and whether it's doing closings or whatever the case may be, that's, the trial and error thing really does work. That's why I'm impressed that Hofstra does have this sort of JD and MBA program together. I do think that there should be more of that, so that the kids, when they get out of school, have a little bit more of an idea. I think like 3 hands went up when I said, it's title insurance, and yet it's part of every transaction you'll ever do. So it seems to me the schools have to really do, not just for title, but development and all these things. I think the schools do need to do a better job, but Hofstra is doing that, obviously.
Go ahead.
No, I think there's nothing like experience when it comes to this area of law. That's why this is such a great program. You don't learn this in law school. You don't learn this anywhere. If you're thinking of how to better get involved about real estate on Long Island, pay attention. Look to some of the real estate blogs. It sounds silly, but when I get ready in the morning, I've got News 12 on. I always find something that's interesting to me. Read Newsday. Again, local things. You always pick up something that maybe you weren't thinking of, or maybe it crystallizes. But those local, locally focused news organizations really, they really have something to offer.
And I would add, if you're really interested in this, show up to a public hearing. It's open to the public. Go see how all this works. You'll be mesmerized. It's really, really crazy.
Just don't tackle the lawyer.
And I'll just take the opportunity to plug, as part of the Breslin Center, we are going to be offering a variety of additional courses, and the first one coming up is a fall seminar that's going to be, we're putting together in conjunction with the Long Island Real Estate Group, and so it will involve guest visits from many members of LIRAG and provide some networking opportunities. So that will be in the fall of this year, and we're going to continue offering new programs, and happy to get feedback through RELA or come directly to me and tell us what you want, and we'll find out from them what they want, and we can hopefully create some more opportunities. So I know people start to have to leave, but let's take like 2 more questions and see. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you all for coming. I enjoyed the presentation. I had a quick question about some present legislation in the Assembly and the Senate about expanding prevailing wage to private projects. Some estimates have suggested on Long Island it can increase costs 35% to 40%, in the city up to 28% IPO. Are you concerned about that? The reason I ask, I'm the president of the 400 Foundation. We have about 500 churches across the state organizing and get active in real estate development and construction. It's a permanent industry. Churches are one of the largest landowners still across the state. So we're getting very active right now, organizing churches across the state. And I think the backdrop of Amazon as well, we don't talk about, they tried to unionize Whole Foods, which Amazon owns, and that was another part of it. And we've seen historical exclusion, and that's another conversation for another time. I'm just interested on your take on that current legislation. Can it impact development in the midst of a housing boom and a development boom right now? Do you see it leading to a downturn or affecting your industry?
You're hitting on probably the single hottest issue right now in the development community. There's a bunch of local groups like Long Island Builders Institute, the Association for Better Long Island, which is the Developers Lobby, which I'm involved with. If this legislation passes in the form that it currently exists in, it will single-handedly demolish the entire development industry on Long Island. There's absolutely no way that development projects, if they were forced to go completely union, would be able to move forward on Long Island. And the IDA, frankly, is the only tool we have in our toolbox to make some of these projects viable. And we need the IDA's benefits to make these projects work. When you add that union component, you're talking about a 30% price increase, schedule increase, and again, it'll single-handedly ruin the entire development.
No one can speak better on than you can. But just to the point before about organizing, and Scott's entirely right. I mean, that is what the real issue is, and Scott said it in its current form. And it remains to be seen what ultimately happens. But there are organizations that are very active on Long Island, like ABLI and Libby, like he said, that are organizing to try and educate people and our elected officials and let them know the devastating effects that this will have. I mean, there's no question. It's been looked at in other municipalities in New York. There are 2 other municipalities in New York that put in a law like this, and it completely stopped development in those jurisdictions. So the practical effects have been seen. To have it statewide truly would be devastating, just like Scott said.
And just to give you my quick outlook on where it goes, there have been tons of discussions that are going on between these local groups and local politicians all the way up to the governor. I think the smart people are starting to understand the detriment that this could cause. However, being that it's such a heavily Democratic state Senate right now, I'm hearing it will pass in some form. but it probably passes in some sort of a watered down form that won't completely, ruin our business.
One last question? Go ahead.
I guess I have one. Obviously, not a fan of zoning boards. I'm not either. Hello? Do you, I have a lot of questions about that, and just two maybe are most appropriate. Do you think that there's something missed by having so many municipalities kind of NIMBY their way through things instead of having a more large-scale idea about what we want Long Island to look at, not just from an economic perspective, but from just a larger level? And do you think that just economics would be a better way to handle these things? Presumably, people aren't going to build sonics on oceanfront property because they won't be very profitable. I guess just those two questions.
So the first thing I want to say is, especially because we're getting recorded, it's not like I don't like zoning boards. That's certainly not the case. And I neglected to mention before, I want to say one thing. When we won the litigation in the Supreme Court, a lot of municipalities will take that up on appeal and cause another year or two of delay and even more expense, sometimes even in the hope that the developer just goes away. In this case, the town of Smithtown saw this 12-page decision, which I have copies for many of you, and basically said, we're not going to win on appeal. And they figured out the better way to go was to settle. And we gave lots of new trees and other things that our client gave that brought us and the town together, because the town knew if we won on appeal, they lose leverage. Because at that point, we're clear we could do, as we've proposed. They decided to say, look, we'll save you the year or two of additional litigation and additional expense. And can you do these 10 very reasonable things to what the town felt would improve the overall development? And the developer and the Sonic franchisee were very happy to do those 10 things, and we all came together at that point. So there are some municipalities that will act proactively when they come to the realization. Others will, for political reasons, not do that. But there are many good boards, and I've appeared many times before the Smithtown Zoning Board since then, and they're a terrific board. But you take every case differently. And something else someone said before, I think Michael said it about Long Island, and there's just something else that my father says real quick, which is he talks about Long Island being this big, and that's true. You come in there for what we do, and I can have a Sonic, and I can get voted down, but you come in the next time on a completely different application, on a completely different property, with a fresh slate. And you present your facts, and you make it a clinical presentation, and you let the facts stand on their own. But you don't make it about the last presentation. You make it about your current presentation. And most of the boards on Long Island will treat you fairly, no matter what you're doing.
Just to add, what you're talking about is something that we as a development community have been pushing for, trying to achieve forever. Unfortunately, it's just a tremendous uphill battle. You have all these individual municipalities. It's home rule. They don't want to let go of any control. We've pushed for legislation that would say any project of significant regional importance or over a certain size gets kicked up to the state level. So we have a more streamlined process. But it doesn't. It's never really took. We've even tried to get third-party reviews, so the towns can hire third-party engineers to do reviews for them to expedite the process. Can't even get them to agree to that. So it's just a very difficult uphill.
Okay, I think, any last kind of final words or conclusions?
Thank you, this was tremendous. Appreciate it. If you want that court decision, and if not, I gave you the site, and if you have any questions about it.
Yeah,